money and how you're actually feeling about your money. Credit can be a really interesting topic. How you're feeling about it might dictate what you do with it. Today, we'll learn some more. Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello. Welcome to the Money and You Show. I'm your host, Michelle Perkins. On the Money and You Show, we tackle a variety of topics, helping you to gain an education around financial issues. And we talk a lot about your relationship with money because that emotional side of it is really dictating your decision making. I have a great show for you today on a topic that everybody is always asking about, everybody wants to know more about, and that is how to manage and improve your credit. So we have a wonderful guest today. She is Dionne Perry. She is a credit litologist. Dionne Perry is a board-certified credit consultant, delivers the goods on credit, giving young people exactly what they need to make it in this economy. Perry consults, writes, and speaks on the subject of credit in all its forms. She can be heard on podcasts and at virtual and in-person events at schools, libraries, organizations, and businesses. With a bachelor's degree in education, training, and development, a master's degree in human resources, experience as a licensed mortgage broker, and now a national award-winning author, Perry is uniquely qualified to educate young people and adults on the importance of maintaining a good credit score. Over the past 25 years, she has dedicated time and effort to helping adults and teens understand the importance of maintaining a good credit score. Perry has also developed Credit Lit Ambassador programs for empowering teens and for educators, counselors, community activists, financial advisors, and other adults interacting with teens to help educate them on how the credit score process works. Welcome, Dionne.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so happy you're here today. This is such a great topic. Everybody is interested in it. Most people are confused by it. So I think it's just something, it's not even going to be long enough for me, but we'll get started. Can you tell us a little about your background and how you got interested in this topic in the first place?
Yeah, of course. Thank you again for the opportunity. As you stated, I at one time, I was a mortgage broker, but prior to becoming a mortgage broker, when I graduated from high school and went on to college, unfortunately, I made a lot of mistakes. I didn't understand the credit scoring process when I was attending college. At that time, the colleges allowed a lot of credit card companies to come out to the orientation. And so from there, I'm doing my first year orientation. I applied for credit. I thought I was responsible enough to handle credit. Again, at that time, I really didn't understand how the credit scoring process worked. Unfortunately, my parents really didn't understand a lot about the credit scoring process. And so to me, I felt like I could handle it. I was in college. I had graduated from high school. I was working part-time, and that I was going to be responsible with it. And unfortunately, it got out of hand. I got approved at the same time for several different types of cards. And at that time, because I didn't understand the impact of it, I made purchases. I made purchases with the cards. Again, I was in school full-time, and I was working part-time, and I thought I could handle the monthly payments. And due to me having part-time income, unfortunately, I was late on some of my credit card payments. And from there, that's when I really started understanding the impact of credit and the importance of making sure that you pay your creditors on time. And unfortunately, because I was working part-time and I was a student, I used up the credit. I pretty much charged up all of the credit cards, pretty much almost to the limit. And so when it was time for me to purchase a vehicle, I needed a vehicle. And when it was time for me to purchase that vehicle, I got denied. I got denied due to my credit score. And that really intrigued me. Like, what are the impacts? Why didn't I learn this in high school so I could be prepared, since the credit card companies were allowed to come out to the college campuses and offer the cards to the students? And so when I got denied for the automobile loan, I really wanted to understand how the credit scoring process worked. And from there, I pretty much just did as much research as I possibly could do to really, really figure out and learn as much as I could about the credit scoring process. And then once I learned it, I felt like it was something that should be taught, particularly in high school, to prepare you for becoming an adult. And it wasn't being taught. And so that's pretty much how I got started. I read up on everything I could get my hands on pertaining to the credit scoring process. I began to repair my credit, and meaning repair, making sure that I made the monthly payments on time. Sometimes I made the payments within the month prior to learning about how the really how the credit scoring process worked. I made them within that month, but I didn't make the payments on the due date. So I incurred late fees. And then I also had late payments on my credit history. And that really changed my life once I really, really understood how the credit scoring process worked.
Thank you. Yeah, that's amazing. So many stories I've heard do begin kind of in that early college, maybe freshman year, when you're right. You know, you go to these events and there's booths and everybody's offering you a credit card, and it's, you know, without any real explanation. That's kind of the same with student loans. You know, not a lot is explained to students as they're getting those loans, and later they have to figure it out. So that's one thing that I'm hoping the show is helping people with, because there is such a lack of transparency, a lack of information, and it's really up to us to learn and educate ourselves, or find people who can help us to be more educated, so that we can play the game. You know, I think one thing that you feel a bit defeated when these things happen, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a financial bind and nobody told you how to avoid that. And so it's very easy to kind of go down that rabbit hole of the whole system's unfair. You know, I'm not going to be able to manage this, because it's, again, a matter of knowledge. And that's where you come in, helping people to understand. And I think in some ways, thinking of credit more as a game that you can play, and you need to, you know the rules and play it as best you can, instead of feeling like this is this insurmountable, you know, kind of thing that I have to live with.
Right.
How did you feel when this had happened to you? You know, just because we talk a lot about your relationship with money here, were there certain emotions that came up around this that either helped you move forward? It sounds like it did, because that's what you do. But, or maybe initially, was there another emotion that, you know, was kind of coming to you?
I was pissed because it wasn't explained to me. Although some of the guidelines are in the statements, some monthly statements at the back, and it's a very small print. So, you know, I was upset. But again, I just took the approach that, hey, you know, I still have an opportunity to really learn from this and to help others. And that's how I arrived at Credit Lit, which is short for credit literacy. And so after that occurred, and I, you know, took control and really dived in and made sure I made my payments on time or before the due date. And eventually I started seeing my score increase. It does take a while. You know, it made me feel better, but it really, really made me want to make sure that I shared this information with anyone. You know, everyone I came across, I tried to share the information with, and in particular, young people, because I just felt, again, that it was something that should have been taught to me in school.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think, you know, it is kind of a long road back. So better to know enough to keep it, you know, in the place you want it, because it has a way of going up very slowly and going down very quickly. So it's a little bit unique in that. I'd love to get to some of the critical aspects of credit that will help you to keep it good. But I'd love to also just ask a couple of general questions. You know, I was surprised when my son went out in the world and he already kind of had a credit score. Like, I'm thinking he's never had any credit. How would he have a credit score? But what I found, and I've actually wondered about this, it starts off pretty decently, like in a good place, it seemed like. And then, you know, it's up to you to keep from letting it drop. But how do people out there just sort of start out? I sort of assumed you'd start out with kind of nothing and have to build up, but it didn't seem that way.
Yeah, it just depends. If you add your children to your credit card as an authorized user, then you are helping them to build a score. And so a lot of parents generally, they give their kids a credit card, they add them to their account, and they set a limit for that particular card, right? And so because you're paying your payments on time, by the time your son turns 18, 19 or whatever, then they already have established credit, but they have established credit through you, which is a good thing. A lot of parents now are adding their kids to, not all credit accounts, maybe one credit card. And then from there, it's helping them to establish credit and have a credit score by the time they become adults. Most people, if you're not added to a account, then you really don't have any credit. You don't have credit history. And that's a part of the calculations of how your score is being calculated. It's based on your credit history. And so if you don't have any credit, then you do have to go out and obtain credit. And a lot of times you get approved for a smaller limit. A lot of individuals sometimes get approved for, let's say, $500. You pay that card on time, for a year or two, then you're building up your credit history. So not everyone, when they turn 18, 19, have a credit history. It just depends if you add your children to one of your credit cards.
Interesting. Okay. And then does that also apply if, for example, you buy or lease them a car, you're paying for it maybe, but if you add them to...
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, same thing. So it's just helping them to establish their credit history. So when they become 21 or graduate from college or whatever they decide to do after high school, they'll already have a history established. But again, unfortunately, everyone's not in that position where they can add their kids to their credit card because unfortunately, due to circumstances, they've made late payments, and you don't want to add your child to a card that has late payment history on it, because then now they're going to have late payments on their credit history. So you just have to make sure that you're adding them to a card that you're paying on timely in order to establish the credit history. I often tell people that we all make mistakes. Some of us knew how the credit scoring process works. Some of us didn't know. Originally in 2020, I published Credit Lit, which is Credit 101 for teens. But recently, I've also published a book for adults, and it's also Credit Lit. It's a monthly planner, and it really shows adults how to either achieve good credit or how to maintain good credit. So I now have two books. I have the book for teens, and I now have the monthly planner, which is Credit Lit, and it's the Credit Lit Monthly Planner, which is also on my website. And this is a 12-month planner. It breaks down the credit scoring process. It also gives budget recommendations, how to track your budget and all of that, so you can ensure that you pay your bills on time to maintain good credit. So pretty much now I'm trying to really just target families, our family members, our educators who are very interested in making sure that their young adults in their lives are ready for the credit process.
Oh, that's fantastic. Can you tell us your website? Is it up there? Yes, it is.
Yeah. So the website is credit-lit credit-lit.com.
Okay.
And so on the website, it just gives a little more information about me. It also touches on the Credit Lit Ambassador program that you mentioned earlier. Also, it has the Credit Lit planner and the Credit Lit book for teens. And we also now have a curriculum. So we do have a curriculum around Credit Lit, Credit 101 for Teens, which consists of a couple of worksheets and 2 PowerPoint presentations to also ensure that our children are prepared for the credit scoring process.
I love that. Thank you so much. That's fantastic. And I think it's so important to have a framework for this because it does feel a little overwhelming, which is why a lot of people don't tackle it. It's like, I know I need to tackle my credit, but I don't know what to do. And, it just feels too hard. And so people put it off until later. And sometimes later is, years down the road. So that's fantastic to create something that people can use to structure this process and to understand. But I find that in general, people get very overwhelmed by these things. You talk about a good credit score. What is a good credit score? What are we talking about number-wise?
I would say right now anything over 750 is an excellent credit score. Your interest rate be much lower, and you want to pay attention to the interest rate that's being offered to you because the higher the rate, the more money that you're having to pay back. Of course, you can get approved with a lower credit score. Lower than 750, but again, your interest rate is different. And in the Credit Lit book for teens, it breaks down what a good credit score is versus a bad credit score. And it also explains, like a lot of people, which this topic can be very taboo. People don't want to discuss it. They're embarrassed by it, but it shouldn't be anything that we are embarrassed by because a lot of us, we were not aware. And so it really, really hones in on trying to make sure that you stay within your budget when you become an adult. And also, it also explains to teens that if you make a late payment, that late payment is on your credit report for 7 years. And 7 years is a very long time that you have to potentially answer for something. So you really want to make sure that they do, whatever they can to try to make sure that they stay within their budget and that they pay the creditors back and that they don't just apply for credit cards and accept the approvals and do like I did when I was in college and just pretty much charge them up. And then having to pay them back, and unfortunately couldn't pay them back on time. But the Credit Lit book, both books explain the good versus the bad credit score.
Right. Thank you. And I want to just go back for a minute to this idea of, sort of past mistakes. So what can we say to people about, the past? I mean, everybody makes mistakes, everybody with money in general. But so say we have some credit mistakes in the past, but we don't want to go forward with feeling like a person who makes these mistakes for the rest of our life. So what can you say to people about that?
Give yourself some grace, right? We all make mistakes. And, as long as you learn from the mistakes, you can move forward. And my story is a prime example of that. I made a lot of mistakes with my credit because I just didn't understand the credit scoring process, but I took the time to learn after I realized the mistakes. I took the time to learn and educate myself on it. And it's material out there. Credit Lit in particular really breaks the credit scoring process down and makes it very simple. Sometimes we can just have information overload and it just becomes too much and we get frustrated with the topic that we're trying to learn or trying to master. And so that's one of the reasons why I came up with the Credit Lit Planner, where it's a 12-month planner, undated planner where you can start at any time. And just, give yourself grace, move forward and read up and find any material that you deem is helpful to you in order to get past the mistake and learn from it. And then once you learn from the mistake, give back. That's pretty much what I have tried to do with Credit Lit. I've tried to give back from the mistakes that I made regarding my credit scores.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And I know when we spoke before, this is actually, was sort of a mission of yours, and you do this really, not as a major moneymaker, but as a a service to the community and to the world. So, I commend you for that. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah.
So speaking of that, there are plenty of people who go and hire people to help them with their credit. Do we need that, or what do you think about all of that?
In the beginning of my career, I did credit repair, and I often realized that you really don't need credit repair. You need to understand how the credit scoring process works. And that's the reason why I publish educational material, right? We wouldn't need credit repair if we educated ourselves on the credit scoring process. And you can repair your credit yourself, just like I did. I just read up. I made sure that, I wrote myself a schedule. I made sure that I stayed within my budget so I could make my payments on time in turn for me in order to get good credit. And so I really don't push credit repair. Now I am all about educating everyone on the credit scoring process and how the process works. If that's something that someone chooses to do, just keep in mind you can do it yourself. You just need to purchase the information and read up on the regulations regarding the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Because if something's being reported correctly, no one, I don't care how much money you pay them, can have that particular late payment removed if it's being reported correctly. And that's in the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And so I just strongly suggest everyone just to understand the credit scoring process and go to the regulations and read up on the regulations around credit scoring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. It's certainly much more empowering. I mean, you might be able to increase your credit score with some help, but after that, you're still going to need to manage it and maintain it. So much more empowering to be able to do it yourself and understand it. Why don't we talk a little just about some of the key factors that go into having a good credit score? Do you want to run through a couple of those? Or?
Yeah, I can quickly run through those. I mean, first, you want to have a mix of credit. So you can't just have all credit cards, right? You got to have different accounts. You have to have revolving accounts, installment accounts. So it depends on the mix of credit, the different creditors that you have. You definitely want to make sure that you're paying at least the minimum, your monthly payment on time before the due date or by the due date. You don't want any late payments being reported. Also, you have to make sure for credit cards, you're not close to the balance. That affects your credit score. So if you have a $500 credit limit and you've charge $500, then that's bringing down your credit score because your utilization, you're using all of the available funds that are available on that card. So that also affects your credit. And then also you want to be mindful of the different types of credit you apply for and how often. A lot of times you see department stores in particular that are encouraging you to apply for their store credit card, but you want to be mindful and really only apply for the creditors that you really need. You don't want to just, apply to receive a 10% discount on a purchase, because the more times a company is pulling your credit report, it's hitting against your credit score unless you're purchasing or shopping for an automobile or a home, and that's within a certain time frame. It's kind of looked at as one inquiry. So those are really the main things, is making sure you have a mix of credit, making sure you don't have late payments, and making sure that you're not maxing out on the credit cards.
Thank you. And, I'm assuming you've found this. I've found it. These rules change. There was a time when the utilization idea wasn't as much of it didn't have as much of an impact, I don't think. That's relatively new. So I think it's important to keep up with it, too, and see what matters at any given point. And to that point, I think maybe it used to be something where when you pay credit off, people would close credit cards. I feel like now having those available credit cards, maybe with no usage, can be a valuable increase. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's true. And I have that information in the planner, which encourages you, pay it off, but don't close the account, because you still want to have that available credit. Look at it in the calculation when they're calculating your score. And that's one of the things a lot of individuals think, oh, I'll pay it off and close the account. No, you still want to keep the account open. You just want to be responsible that, hey, you're not going to charge it back up like you did before. And so, it's a lot of different myths, but definitely you don't want to close the accounts after you've paid the creditors off, particularly credit cards.
Yeah, and we've talked about paying on time, even if it's a minimum payment. What do you have to say about paying minimum payments? That drags out the payment
You
process.
have to look at the interest rate. Of course, if you're paying the minimum payment, it takes a very long time to pay the balance back, right?
Yeah.
But if we all have different circumstances. And at this moment, if you can only afford to pay the minimum payment, by all means do that and make sure that you pay it on time. At least you're preventing yourself from having a late payment that's going to be on your credit report for 7 years from the last activity date, from 7 years from the date that you made that late payment. So at least at a minimum, make sure you make the minimum payment timely.
Yeah, thank you. It is great if you can, be able, or, whether that's a function of true ability or discipline, but to be able to pay more than the minimum if you can. But I think it's really important, too, to understand what bills are affecting your credit, because if you have you are in a difficult situation, you have to make a choice between, paying A or paying B. I think you want to make some payment toward the one that's going to impact your credit, perhaps.
Yeah. And you should be pulling your credit report at least once a year. At least, of course, I encourage more than once a year. You have the credit monitoring companies that you can pull it more often than that, but you definitely want to pull it at least once a year to make sure that the information on the credit report is accurate, the accounts, the balances, and all of that. But you definitely, anything that's revolving, like credit cards, installment, can be a loan, automobile loan. You could have a loan from a credit union, a personal loan. Those are considered installment accounts. But you definitely want to make sure that whatever you have on your credit report, that you're making timely payments.
Yeah. All of this is important, and all of this takes a little time. You have to fit it into your life like you fit other things into your life. It's not like you're ever going to just have a free day with nothing to do and you'll pull your credit report. I mean, you actually have to kind of push yourself to do these things. And I think it's super important to make space in your calendar to literally manage your money. And this is a really important thing. When people sometimes sit down and go, well, I have an hour on my calendar to manage my money, I don't know what to do. Well, these kinds of things are very important to take the time and do.
Yeah, they're very important. And even in the planner for adults, it have you pulling your credit report quarterly. And then you write down, okay, the first quarter, what was your credit scores? And then the second quarter, you compare them to the first quarter, what affected it, what made it go up, what made it go down. And then you can see the difference and keep track on it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. And so I think, how often would you pull the credit report yourself? I mean, more than once a year, maybe, or is once a year enough?
Yeah, free. I think it's annualcreditreport.com. I think you get a free annual report. But I strongly encourage it, especially if you're trying to prep for a large purchase, like purchase a home or automobile in the next 12 months. I would suggest that you pull it at least quarterly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. And how many months does it take? So, if you have something, I mean, is there a rule of thumb as far as when you can expect to see a credit increase? If you're taking really good care of everything for a certain amount of time?
Good payment history. Let's say you had some bad payment history and now you're on the track with good payment history. It could take 12 months for you to see a difference in your score. Potentially, if you have a decent score and you open, let's say you don't have an automobile loan, but you have a decent score, you need to go get an automobile. You get an automobile, and then that sometimes will increase your score because now you have a different mix of credit, right? Mm-hmm. So it really, really depends on what type of accounts you currently have, how often you'll see the score spike up. But if it's mainly pertaining to payment history, you will see it go up pretty good. Like if you pay a revolving account off, if you pay a credit card off, let's say you have a credit card with a limit of $1,000, you get a bonus, right? And you decide that you're going to take that bonus out. I'm going to pay that credit card off. Mm-hmm. And you pay that credit card off. And let's say you had already maxed it out to the max of 1,000. Then you will see your score slightly increase because you're no longer using the high utilization. You don't have a balance. You have a credit card with $1,000 funds available. So that will help your score to go up slightly also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. It also really highlights the fact that this is something you need to work on now because there's some future, car, house, whatever that you want to buy, and it's not going to change overnight. So, you want to be working on this in anticipation of, a year down the road, perhaps. So there is a time gap. So overall, this will be, unfortunately, the last question I have time for, but hopefully everybody will go check your books because they're amazing. I'm going to be getting them myself for people. So, but let me I don't want people, everybody has their own money beliefs around debt. I really don't like people to be fearful of debt because it can be a big help in life, mm-hmm. To expand your life, to invest in yourself, whatever. So sometimes I feel like this all sounds so difficult and challenging and, I'll just never have debt will be the answer for some people. And culturally, there are communities who have, for good reason, more, of a sense of apprehension around debt. Well, how do you feel about debt in general?
I've never been fearful of debt as long as you're being responsible with mm-hmm. it, right? Because again, it can allow you to make purchases with paying a smaller amount. Prime example, purchasing a home. Most individuals don't have X amount of dollars in their savings account or even checking account to purchase a home outright. So you're going to have some debt. That's how we all get through, being able to achieve certain things is utilizing the credit history that we have. So, no, I definitely don't say be fearful of it. It can be your best friend if you know how to work it. And one of the ways in understanding and making sure that you're working it right is understanding the credit scoring process, because the higher the score, the lower the interest rate. And sometimes if you have an excellent credit score, you don't even pay interest, right? And so you can make a purchase for something that you don't have enough money in your savings account to make. But because of your good credit score, you can make that purchase and not even pay interest on it. So I've always, after I made my mistakes and learned from it, I've always tried to use it as my benefit. With having a high score. So no, it's nothing to be fearful of, nor is the credit scoring process is nothing to be fearful of. It's just something that we have to take a lead. And it really, to be honest with you, once you take the time out to read the 2 books I published, I mean, the teen book, it's a small pocket-sized book. They learn it like in less than 10 minutes. I just cut to the chase and explain to you what affects your credit score, what you need to do, what you shouldn't do, and make some additional recommendations. So it doesn't take a lot of time to learn it, and you shouldn't be fearful of credit, nor should you be fearful of debt.
Fantastic. Thank you. And thank you so much for being here. I love this conversation. I think it's, people are so curious about what's going on with their credit, and it's a very important foundational piece of your financial life. So there are certain foundational things that we've got to work on in order to go to any next level with respect to building wealth and being financially savvy. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for introducing us to your books, and we'll make sure we put in the show notes how people can access them through your website. And thank you for the work you do. It's really amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. And I just want to encourage anyone who have young people in their lives to really start having a conversation. And when you're making purchases and they're with you, explain to them how you're making those purchases.
That's great. I love that. That's fantastic. So, okay. Well, thank you again. And thank you, audience, for being here. We love having you show up for the Money and You Show. Hope you're learning a lot from us here and enjoying the variety of topics. So any questions, comments, you can reach out to me at Michelle, 2 L's, at limitfreelife.com. We'd love to hear any requests for different types of topics or questions about the ones that you're hearing. So you can find us on all the podcast platforms, on Roku, on the Limit Free Life YouTube channel. And we look forward to talking to you every week, broadcasting from ubngo.com here in Burbank, California. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you.